Father, will bless you. Teach us your word in the name of Jesus. This is the ministry of Moses, part 12. The ministry of Moses, part 12. We are going to take our text from Exodus chapter 10, verse 24 to 29, and also chapter 11, verse 1 to 10. Now let us consider verse 24. And Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, Go ye, serve the Lord. Only let your flocks and your herd be stayed. Let your little ones also go with you. With this statement, we can sense how wicked Pharaoh is. He wanted them to go, but he's stripping them off from everything that can sustain them on the way. He is saying this because he knows that if they go without those things that can sustain them, poverty and lack will make them run back to Egypt. And at that time, they will be willing to serve Pharaoh forever. If you leave Egypt without a means of survival, then you have not overcome, because in no time, lack will bring you back. There are some people who have left their enemies. They have left certain domain where God asked them to leave. But because of lack and poverty, they have to go back to that place. That's the exact thing Pharaoh is trying to do to the Israelites. He allowed them to go, but he wants them to leave everything that can sustain them on the journey. This is the warning. Don't leave Egypt without a means of survival. That's the warning. Otherwise, you may end up running back and be ready to serve even more than before. So if you leave Egypt without a means of survival, then you have not overcome, because in no time, lack will bring you back. Thank God for Moses who did not buy Pharaoh's idea. Since the king noticed that Moses would not comply, he hardened his heart again. Now let's consider verse 28 to 29. And Pharaoh said unto him, Get thee from me, take heed to thyself, see my face no more. For in that day thou seest my face, thou shalt die. And Moses said, Thou hast spoken well, I will see thy face again no more. The king spoke a negative utterance to Moses, and Moses averted it by saying, I will see thy face no more. When people pronounce something negative into your life, change it. Don't embrace any declaration that does not look like God's plan for your life. Let us consider Exodus chapter 11, verse 1 to 3. And the Lord said unto Moses, Yet I will bring one plague more upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards, he will let you go. When he shall let you go, he shall surely thrust you out. Speak now in the ears of the people, and let every man borrow his neighbor, and every woman her neighbor, jewels of silver, jewels of gold. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servant, and in the sight of the people. Actually, God knew what to do to make the king let them go. But he just refused to do that because he wanted to do enough wonder in Egypt for them to talk about. Now God has decided to throw the last stone of discipline into Egypt. And the weight of this stone will be felt. It will be so strong that the king will have no choice than to let them leave in a hurry. God told the people to borrow valuables from the Egyptians. The question is, how will they return it? Why is God asking them to borrow when he knows they can't return it. God did this because all through the process of the labor in Egypt, they were only living a hand to mouth kind of life. They worked but had nothing to show for it. Now, because the king sat on their payment, so they were working in Egypt, yet there was no payment. All they were getting is just food, daily bread, but there was no savings because that work they were doing, there was no reward for it, except for the food that will keep them alive in order to continue in the slavery. So God decided to pay his people through those things they borrow from the Egyptians. So God asking them to borrow golds and other valuables from the Egyptians as they leave is God's way of paying them back for for the labors they have made in the land of Egypt. Since the king refuses to pay them, God decided to pay them by himself. So that was the reason God asked them to borrow. So those things they borrow are, they are the reward for their labor. Moses was very great in the land of Egypt. This greatness was in two dimensions. Number one, he was great in the sight of Pharaoh's servant. Number two, he was great in the sight of the people. The greatness, Moses was great. Moses was great not because he had gathered cattle for himself. It was not because he had started a business and is making a lot of profit. It was based on the numbers and the intensity of those things the Lord has done and is doing through him. Therefore, I would like to submit to you that greatness in the kingdom is not measured by things, but instead it is measured by our alignment to God and by the numbers of time we yield, you know, by the numbers of time we yield ourselves to the degree where God can use us willingly as a blessing, as a counselor, and as a deliverer to his people. So greatness in the kingdom is not measured by things, but by how much we can yield to the degree through which God can use us as a blessing to others. That's what is greatness. After Pharaoh had said, "See my face no more," Moses and Aaron still went to him to reveal to him the next thing God has planned to do, but he refused. They told him how that the Lord will pass through the land of Egypt and kill the firstborn in each house. But yet he didn't hearken to them. To serve God, you need to be divinely empowered for faith, which will be translated into boldness for you. So it is faith in you that supplies boldness for you. So it is the faith of God in you that is converted to boldness. So when you see a child of God that is bold, the source of that boldness is faith. Moses was not afraid of Pharaoh's strength. The king had promised to kill Moses the next time they see, but he still went to the palace. It will mean that Moses was more concerned by God than, he was more concerned about God than death. He was more concerned about fulfilling the kingdom mandate than even his life. This will mean that the life of Moses means nothing to him as long as the will of the Father is done. You know, these are some of the things that made Moses a giant in the spirit. Don't envy God's mighty manifestations through Moses if you have not carefully studied his life of obedience and sacrifice unto God. Don't just desire the dimensions of Moses. You need to carefully study his life of obedience and sacrifice unto God. because those greatness you see Moses exhibit is based on how obedient he was and the numbers of sacrifice he has made. I pray the Lord will give us understanding in the name of Jesus. This is the wisdom of God. Don't sell it.